Hi everyone, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. My name is Osereme, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how to go about the making of this dress. Now this video is going to be the pattern drafting. I'm going to show you guys how to go about the cutting of this beautiful bustier dress with a stylish yoke both in front and the back. So I'm going to show you guys how to go about this from start to finish. Like I said, this is the pattern drafting tutorial. In the next video I'm going to be showing you guys how to sew it. So if this is something you're interested in, keep on watching and let us get started. So guys, to make this dress, you will need an African print fabric or whatever fabric you would like, but I will advise you use African print. So you will need about 3 yards of it for the body part. This fabric is gotten from Shopstar by Reme if you like to order from me. And then you will need a net fabric, whichever one you like. It's kind of, you can use a lace fabric as well if you like. But here I'm going to be using a net, and for the net you just need about 1 yard. So now we're going to go ahead and draft out our pattern. I already drew out some of the lines. So this is the shoulder line, okay? So from shoulder to bust line here, this is the bust line. Here to here is my under bust, and shoulder to waist in front here. Now this shoulder to waist in front, I now measure it differently from shoulder to waist at the back. Now my shoulder to waist in front for this pattern that I'm about to draft is 15.5. Shoulder to waist at the back for me is 14. You can see there's a difference between shoulder to waist in front and back. Now this is because I am going to be using a side dart. Now for those of you who want to follow this tutorial squarely and you do not know how to take your shoulder to waist in front and back, what you should do is, let's say for example you measured your shoulder to waist in front the way you normally do it, and you had about 16 inches as your shoulder to waist, right? Now what you do is, for your shoulder to waist at the back, you can just take about 1 inch away and use 15 inches as your back, or you can take 1.5 inch away depending on how busty you are and use 14.5 inches as your shoulder to waist at the back. I hope you understand. So if you don't know what yours is, once you've taken your shoulder to waist in front, remove about 1 inch and that will be your shoulder to waist at the back. So now the next thing we're going to do is, from the center of the shoulder line, I'm going to go in by 3 inches for my neck width for this dress. Now I'm not going to be drawing out the neckline yet because we are not going to be using a normal round neckline. Now again, from the center, I'm going to go in by half of my shoulder measurement, which is 7 inches. Now after marking this, I'll come down by 1 inch from that point. So I'll mark it here. Now I'm going to connect from that 1 inch I came down by to the top of that neckline that I drew out earlier. So that was the reason I drew out the neckline first. So now after doing this, from the shoulder slope here, I'm going to come down by my armhole depth. Now to calculate your armhole depth, divide your bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 to what you get. So my bust measurement is 33 divided by 6 plus 1.5 is 7. So from the shoulder slope I marked 7, and then I am drawing a straight line across that 7 inches point. And now this becomes my chest line. I do this a lot on the channel, and I think a lot of you guys should be used to it by now. So now from the shoulder slope, I'm going to connect a straight line to meet the chest line, just like I've done here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the midpoint of this straight line. So divide what I have here into 2 equal halves. I made a mark, and from that point I'm going to go in by ½ inch. Now you're going to come to the chest line and you're going to mark your bust measurement divided by 4. Your bust measurement divided by 4. So I marked it here, and now I'm going to connect from here to here and then to this place. So I'm going to be using my curve to connect all of them. So this is my armhole curve. If you do not have an armhole curve, you can use your free hand, but just make sure you are getting it, like you have a nice curve at the end of the day. So now I'm through with this. The next thing I'm going to go ahead and do now is to draw out my dart. So on the bust line, I'm going to go in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement, and on the waistline, I'll go in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement as well. So I'm going to be joining both points together with a straight line. So after doing this, from the bust line, I came down by ½ of an inch. This is not compulsory, but if you like to, you can do it, okay? Now after that, on the waistline, I'm going to go out on both sides of my line by ½ an inch. This is for my dart. So I'm going to connect from this ½ inch point to the other ½ inch I came down by from the bust line. So now this is going to now give me my dart. So can you see what I have here? So now once you're through with this, on the shoulder, divide this line into 2 equal halves and connect it back to the bust point, just like you see me doing like this, so that we'll be able to take our shoulder and over bust darts. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my body measurement. So on the bust line, I'll mark my bust measurement divided by 4. On the waistline, I'll mark my waist measurement divided by 4 here. But on the waistline, I will need to replace my dart. So I'll just measure it, which was 1 inch, and replace it back. So after doing this, I'm going to join the sides together. So I'll join from the armhole to the bust, and then from the bust down to the waist like this. So now I'm done drawing out the basic bodies, kind of like the skeleton for it. So now we're going to take our dart for the bustier part. So I'm going to be using 1.5 inch as my dart intake. So I divided 1.5 inch into 2 equal halves. So I just did this on my tape. So what I will be doing now is on the under bust line from my dart legs, I'll go out by that half of the 1.5 inch on both sides. So from the dart legs. So after doing this, I'm going to connect it straight down. All right, straight down. So now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to connect curves from the under bust line where you draw out these points to meet the bust point, the top of your dart, okay, like this, and then like this. So just from the under bust to the top of your dart. All right, so I'm now going to extend this to meet the bust line. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to determine how covered I want my bustier to be. So from the chest line, I am going to go up either by 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 2 inches. Now this depends on you. So I decided to do 1.25 inch. Okay, so I went up by 1.25 inch from the chest line. So from that point I came up by, I am going to use my curve from that point to connect a sweetheart neckline towards the center of my pattern paper. So you can see what I did here. Okay, so now I will just extend this now from the center again towards the armhole. So this is what I have. I'm done drawing out the neckline. So on both sides of this line here, coming from the shoulder, I went out by 1/4 inch on both sides. You can use 1/2 inch on both sides. It depends on how busty you are. Okay, if you're very busty, you can do 1/2 inch on both sides. But for me, I'm doing 1/4 inch on both sides, and I'm going to connect them back to the bust line. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to draw out the yoke for the front, and the yoke is just a very simple one. So from the neck here, I'm just going to connect a curve to meet the neckline. Just do exactly what I'm doing. So from here, I'll connect a little curve here, and that we have our yoke for the upper part of the front. So now after doing this, the next thing I'm going to do is to replace my dart, okay? So on this chest line, on the little dart I have on the chest line, I'm going to measure it. It's just from here to here, just here to here. I'm just going to measure it about 1/4 inch, but I just decided to add 1/2 inch to the side. Now on the waistline, I'm going to measure my waist measurement divided by 4, which is right here. So now I'll measure from this dart here, the marker, to the other marker. Don't bother yourself with what is inside anymore. Measure from marker to marker. And what I had was 2 inches. So now from the waist measurement that I marked before, I measured that 2 inches. And you notice they go outside of the body. So just go ahead and mark them now outside of the body. So now I have a new side measurement. So that pencil mark that we had earlier is no longer it. Okay? So now once I'm done adding back my body measurement, remember I told you guys that my shoulder to waist in front was 15.5. So shoulder to waist at the back was 14. So 15.5 minus 14 is 1.5. So from the bust line, I came down by that 1.5 on the side, and I just drew it into the bust point like this, and I am going to be cutting off this part. So by the time I cut off this part, this side that I just marked, you will notice that when you sew your dress together, both the front and the back will be exactly the same length. One will not be longer than the other. So you must take away your side dart if you are using this type of measurement, front and back. So now to take away the side dart, I cut through the center of the waist dart, and then I cut through the bust line as well to get to the bust point. So I made sure that it did not cut off entirely so that the pattern paper will not be hard to tape down. So now I just cut out a tape and I use it to hold it in place, and this is what I have. So sometimes when you tape your pattern paper down, you will notice that one side now becomes longer than the other. It's either the upper part is longer or the bottom part is longer. That's if you take a side dart. So whichever one is longer, all you have to do is to just extend it to the top and replace it back so that it's not now short. So with this being done, we are done drafting out our bustier. And trust me, this method of using a side dart to draft out your bustier is literally the best. I have used it for people who are very busty, and it just gives a perfect fit. It doesn't have that flatness at the bust area. You do not have that flatness at the bust area when you use this method to cut out your bustier. So just be patient with it and try it out, and you notice why I have been very particular about this method in my recent videos, because it is very perfect and it gives a perfect bustier. Okay, so now I am going to go ahead now and cut off the yoke. I'll be using the yoke later to also know where the yoke for the back should start from, so I will just keep it close by. So now I'm cutting off all the dart areas from the front, the dart areas that I marked earlier, as you can see. Do the same thing for the other side as well, and here we have all the pieces for the front. Now we are going to go ahead and cut out the back pieces. So now for the back pattern, I have drawn out a lot of things and I'm just going to explain it to you guys. It's exactly what I did before on the front pattern. So before I started doing anything on the back, I drew out this trace line, which is the zipper allowance line for the back. So after doing that, I went ahead to draw out my chest line, my shoulder line, my bust line, and my waistline. So remember I told you guys that my shoulder to waist at the back is going to be 14. So that was what I used here, 14 inches. Shoulder to waist at the back is 14. So for every other part, that's the shoulder line, the bust line, and the chest line, I did everything just the same way I did on the front pattern. Okay, so now from the neckline, the shoulder line, the back neckline is going to be a round neckline. Okay, I came down by 1 inch and I'm connecting it into the shoulder to give me my round neckline. It's going to be a very high neckline, but it is round. Now, after doing that, on the bust line, I'm going to come in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement, mark it on the chest line and waistline as well. Notice that all the measurements I'm taking, I'm marking them from the zipper allowance line. Make sure you are marking from the zipper allowance line. That's the difference between the front and the back. So after doing this, I went out by on both sides of this dart by half of an inch, just like I did in front. But I'm not going to be coming down here. I'm just going to be taking this dart from the waist all the way to the top of the line on the chest line. Now, notice that the chest line is where our dart stopped at the back, but in front is usually on the bust line, okay? So now after doing this, on the bust line, I marked my bust measurement divided by 4. And on the waistline, I marked my waist measurement divided by 4. And then I replaced my dart, okay? So now I'm going to join the sides together. So from the chest to the bust and from the bust to the waist. The back is very easy to draft, honestly. It's just that you want to take note of all the zipper allowance lines so that you don't start all your measurements from the zipper allowance. Now for the back yoke, I am just going to place the front yoke here to know where my yoke neckline should start from. So I use the front yoke to mark it, which I've done here. So from here, I'm just going to create the V shape that the back yoke has. So I'll connect from here and I'll connect it straight down to the bust line. So now the upper part is now my yoke for the back. So I'll just extend the bust line out like this, okay? So I know where my yoke is. So the upper part now is my yoke for the back. And that is it. We are done drafting out the back pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead now and cut out the pieces. So now this is the back pattern with the yoke. This is the front pieces with the front yoke. So now this is it for the drafting of the upper part of this dress. This is the back, okay? And then we have the front here. So now let's go ahead and cut out the skirt. Now for the skirt, it is very simple. I have my pattern paper here. I'm just going to go ahead and draw out a starting line at this top. So for the skirt, I'm going to be drafting out the back pattern and I'll be using it for both the front and the back. So I'm going to show you guys how to go about that. So now I'm coming in by 1 1/4 inch for my zipper allowance, okay, which is going to be the zipper allowance for the skirt part. So I'm going to just go ahead now and use my ruler to connect all the points to give me a straight line. So now this is the zipper allowance line for the back of the skirt. Now after this is done, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is from the waistline here, I'm going to measure down to my hip line. So my waist to hip is 8 inches. I marked it here, okay? So now from the waist, I'm going to measure the length that the skirt part is going to be, and I'm marking it here at about 24 inches. Now for you to get the length of the skirt part, you have to minus the upper part from the full length of the dress that you're making. Remember that the upper part is 15.5, and then we need to add that to the skirt part to make it a full dress, okay? So now once you're through with this, remember that this is the zipper allowance line and all your measurements must start from that zipper allowance line. So on the waistline, I came in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement for my dart, and I came down from that point by 4 inches. So I connected both of them together with a straight line. And now on the waistline, I'm going out on both sides of that line by half of an inch, just like I did on every other dart I have drawn out earlier. And now I'm going to be connecting this down to the 4 inches point that I drew out earlier. So just do your dart just like you see I've done here. So once this is done, the next thing I'm going to be doing is add my body measurement. So from the zipper allowance line here, I came in on the waist by my waist measurement divided by 4, which I marked. And now I measured my dart and replaced it back. Now on the hip line, I'll mark my hip measurement divided by 4, which is 9 inches. Okay. Now on the hemline, what I normally do is whatever I have on the hip line, I remove 1 inch. So now I'll just mark 8 inches on the hemline. So now I'm going to join all the last points together to give me the body shape for this skirt. After marking it out, just go ahead and cut it out just like you see me doing. So I'm just cutting out the side, the waist, and this is what we have. So now, if I want to use this to cut out the front pattern, I'll just fold away the zipper allowance like this, and it becomes the front pattern. So that means we can use this pattern paper to cut out both the front and back of our skirt. So as it is like this is the front pattern, and if I open it up, this is the back pattern. So I'm going to take all these pieces now and I'm going to cut them out on my actual fabric, even the upper and bottom parts. So now for the upper part of the front, I've gone ahead to iron out stay on the wrong side of my fabric that I'm going to be using. It's only the front that I will iron stay on, and that is because it's going to have a bustier and I want it to be like very strong. Okay, so now I'm placing the center front piece, which is the one that is shaped the way mine is shaped right now, on the folded edge. You can see this fabric is folded into 2. Place the center front piece on the folded edge, and after that place the side front close to it. Make sure it's about 2 inches away before you pin it down. So once you're through with this, you're going to go ahead and cut this out, and we are going to be adding stitching allowances all the way around. So at the bottom here, I'm going to be adding about half an inch, on the side here half an inch, around the curve half an inch. So basically around the center front piece, I'm just going to be adding half an inch of stitching allowance. Okay, so now for the side front, at the bottom I'll add half an inch, at the center here half an inch, on the curved area half an inch. It's going to be half an inch mostly. The only part that is going to be having more than half an inch is the side, and that's because you will need more than half an inch here. So what I'm doing here is about 1 1/4 inch, so that we'll be able to give this dress some stitching allowance. So every other side is half an inch, but the side is 1 1/4 inch. So I did the same thing for the back part as well. Half an inch at the top and bottom. We don't need to add any stitching allowance to the zipper allowance area. And now to the side, just like I did on this other side, I added about 1 1/4 inch. Okay, so now for the upper part, I'm just going to go ahead and fold my net fabric into 2. Like I said in the beginning of this video, you can use a lace for this as well. So I'm going to just arrange my yoke pieces on it as it's folded into 2, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut them out. When I'm cutting this, I'm adding half an inch stitching allowance all the way around. So guys, I'm done cutting out the back yoke and the front yoke. You can see them side by side with the body part. So this is what it looks like. I've also gone ahead to cut out the skirt pieces, both for the front and the back. So I used this pattern paper to cut out both the front and the back, like I said. And I added half inch to the top and 1 1/4 inch to the side. To the center part where the zipper allowance is, you don't need to add stitching allowance. Okay, now I told you guys I was going to use this to cut out both the front and the back. So when I folded it in, I used it to cut out this front piece here. Okay, so this is the front piece. It's in a fold. So I placed it like this and I used it to cut it out. Still the same stitching allowance around. At the bottom, I added about 2 inches extra allowances to the bottom of the skirt, just because I wanted the skirt part to be longer. So now this is the skirt, this is the body for the back, right? And then this is the yoke, this is the body for the front, and this is the yoke. So in my next video, I'm going to be joining all of this together. So thank you so much for watching this. I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.